because. That word by in Greek, it's ek. It means out of or as a result of, and there's no thee there. By a work or by works of law. He's not talking about Moses' law. You see, when there's no thee in front of the word in Greek, it doesn't mean the law anymore. It's no longer a particular law. He's saying any law. Now notice the difference between these two. It's very important. You see, to say that no work of the law would ever justify you means that there's no work in Moses' law that would justify you, but maybe there's some other law, like Jesus' law. If you obeyed it, it would justify you, if there's a thee there. But if there's no thee there, we're not talking about a specific law anymore. But instead, it's the kind of thing that law is. In the Greek, it says, because by works of law, any work, no flesh will be justified. Not any kind, whether you're a Jewish kind or a Gentile kind, an under law kind or not under law kind, it's not going to justify you. It won't make you straight again. Why? Well, what's law for? For through the law, and there's no thee there again in Greek, for through law only comes a knowledge of sin. You see, law does not offer justification from sin, it merely offers the knowledge of sin. Law simply points out and says, you failed. First of all, it says, do this, do this, do this. And if you do it all fine, great, no problem. Honor and glory be to you. But if you fail one time, now law stands up as a condemner. And law has no offering to remove your sins. It only points out sin. It does not justify from sin. It only offers the knowledge of sin. So Jews failing under a non-justifying law principle, they also need an alternative mercy method of justification. That gets us ready for my favorite verse. But before we read the verse, look at the paragraph title. With no connection, okay, just keep on printing up there, machine. With no connection to man's effort, you see the word no connection? With no connection to man's effort, a free gift was given by a just, that means he's right, he does it the right way, and glory-deserving God, because he's the one who did it, not us, to justify all who shamefully failed, and we all shamefully failed. We knew what to do, and we didn't do it. We need some way to be justified of our failures and escape. So here's what it says. But now, oh, I'm so thankful that now there's another way. But now has been manifested another way. It has been made seen in the past, and it stands seen until today. But now apart from law. Now, see that apart? It's the Greek word choris. I'm told, a professor from Stanford said that choris and chasm, the English word chasm, both have their same root back there somewhere, meaning like the giant chasm that's in the Grand Canyon or the chasm that runs through Iceland. I saw it a few years ago when I was there where the Great Continental Divide is at. He says it's that far apart. It's a giant chasm. He says, but now completely far apart with no connection whatsoever to law. And there's no thee there, we're going to see in a minute. We see a similar verse in Romans 4:6 that we'll study next week. Just as David also speaks of the blessing upon the man to whom God reckons righteousness, and there's that Greek word choris again, has no connection to works. He says there's another way of being righteous. It has nothing to do with what you and I do. It has nothing to do with law. It's a righteousness given to you as a gift. But now apart from law, know thee. That means not just Moses' law, but any law. Any law there is that you could dream of, he says there's another way. But now apart from law, the righteousness of God, my translation says, the New American Standard says, what is that of genitive there? What's a descriptive genitive? A God's kind of righteousness. In other words, there's another kind of righteousness. It's being manifested now. This kind of righteousness is not like the righteousness you read about in the Old Testament. It's a law of righteousness of God which has been manifested. Now, we're going to see where it was manifested in a minute. But he says first, it was witnessed by the law. Now notice there's a thee there. He says the law gave you some witness about it. The law was telling you it was coming someday. And where do we see it at in the law? Well, the prophets talked about it. The 5 Old Testament books talked about it, and the prophets talked about it. Well, what is this righteousness that the Old Testament was giving us a hint of? Well, it was the a righteousness from God, a subjective genitive. It's not a righteousness that's from man. What do you mean righteousness from man? Well, if I'm righteous because I went to church every Sunday night and I studied my Bible well and I went to the right kind of church and I did it right and I believed it right, well, that's a righteousness that came from me. You see, I achieved it by living righteously. But he says this righteousness is not going to be a righteousness from what man does. It's a righteousness that comes from God. And he goes further, a righteousness from God, and what kind is it? Well, it's a through faith kind. It's kind of like here's faith, it's a big tunnel. And righteousness is right there on the other side. How am I going to get it? Well, you're not going to get it by achieving it or doing it right. You're going to get it by going through this tunnel, this thing called faith. I'm going to put my trust in it because I can see it right there on the other side. It's through faith. Now, faith doesn't save anyone, never has, never will. It's the thing that you have faith in which saves. And so he's going to define for you who it is that does the saving. It's faith in Jesus Christ. And who can have this righteousness that we can get by trusting Jesus? Who can have it? Well, he says it is for all those. Look at it. The Greek word ace. It means with a view to all those who. Now notice he's going to define the category of who can have that righteousness. It's a select group. It's all those who faith. Actually, it's the same word in Greek. It's all those faithers. That's who it is. You see, if you and I are a achiever, let's put that, achiever as a versus a believer. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying to achieve for God, but just to make a contrast, as far as your righteousness are concerned, there's two kinds of people. There's a believer and there's an achiever. The believer is the one who's trusting someone else to give him righteousness, and the achiever is the one who's trying to earn it on his own. And no problem if you've never sinned any time in your life, from the day you're born to the day you're dead. But if you've already failed at that kind of righteousness, you need another kind. So he says it's only for those believers. Why is it only believers, Paul, that can have that righteousness? Then I would have put a parenthesis there if I had been translating. For there is no distinction. Let me prove it to you, Paul says. What do you mean there's no distinction? No distinction between whom? For all have sinned, whether they were Jews under law or Gentiles who did not have law. Every one of them sinned and they all fell short of the glory of God. And since they all failed and they all sinned, they're not going to be righteous based on their own works. They need another way. They're going to have to quit trusting themselves, and they're going to have to trust someone else to give them righteousness for free. Let's skip this parenthesis now. Let's jump past it. It's for all those who believe. How are they going to have this righteousness? Here's how. Being justified. It's present, passive, continuing action in Greek. It means he keeps on justifying you. Every day he washes you again. Every day he cleans you again. Every day you get a new crooked spot and he makes it straight. And today I'm straight not because I live straightly, but I'm straight because the sins are taken off of me and dumped on the cross. And since my sins are on the cross, I don't have to have sins anymore. So I can stand before God as if I live without one sin in my whole life. Now, that's the kind of righteousness I want. I don't have to be scared every night. I don't have to wonder, did I do enough? Because I know I didn't. I don't have to wonder if I failed, because I know I did. I know that my hope is somebody's paying for my sins. It's given as a gift, being justified freely. You know, I wondered if I was the only one who saw that, so just in case I would be criticized about it, I went and checked, and there were other translations. NIV had it. Because that's the point of that word, dorea. Dorea emphasizes the idea of free. It was freely by His grace. Now, that word by is not in Greek. Actually, the word grace is in a case called dative instrumental. Anytime a word is in a dative and there's no reason for it to be in dative, like following a word that demands a dative or whatever, anytime that happens, it turns into what's called a dative instrumental. It means it's the instrument that's being used to achieve some goal that you're trying to do. Now notice what he says here. You were justified, I did it for free, and I used the instrument of grace. Now grace just means a gift. If you want to literally translate that the way they did, it would be justified as a gift by a gift. That sounds kind of weird. It's really the idea of it was done for free, and I did it as a gift. Now what is the gift that can allow me to be righteous again? The grace which was through the redemption. Now let's look at this word redemption. The word redemption means, literally, this is right